It is Monday afternoon, and you see an entire quadrant of class 2s on your schedule. What do you do as a dentist? This is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. I know that answer. The answer is cry inside, but you got to do them. The patient has gotten a cavity between their teeth. They didn't floss, and we're here with Dr. Charles Chip Payet of North Carolina, and he's going to share with us why he invested in becoming a less annoyed restorative dentist 24 years into his career. So, Chip, I admire all that you've posted through the social media world, even way back in the day prior to the Facebook groups. So glad to have you on this program. Just catch our audience up to where you are today. How long you've been a dentist? Do you own a practice? Just orient them as to who you are.
All right. So, I'm really glad to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I graduated in 1998. So 24 and a half years ago. It's kind of hard thinking that I'm coming up on 25 years of working on teeth. But from UNC Chapel Hill, I've been in North Carolina ever since. Moved to Charlotte, started my practice, actually just passed my 24th anniversary of opening that.
Nice.
I struggled a lot for many years, but finally my wife rescued me by running the practice so I can focus on the dentistry. And so I do a lot of different stuff. Not a super GP, but I like some perio, some ortho, some cosmetics. But I'm bread and butter general dentistry practice for most.
First of all, Chip, I have something to say. Don't call bread and butter. You want to know why? Nobody eats bread and butter anymore. Kale and quinoa. Bread and butter is a special treat.
Oh.
Every day when you come home at 5:30, there's a big pile of bread and a giant thing of butter, like it's the 1950s to slather on.
No, that's breakfast.
Oh, gotcha. Breakfast. So kale and quinoa. So I appreciate you, and I know you've always been into seeing and growing yourself. But we're talking today about this experience with our friend Dr. Lincoln Harris, awesome Nacho sponsor with Ripe Global. But before we get into his amazing CE opportunity, tell me a little bit about the history of Chip CE. Did you go to in-person events? Did you take hands-on courses? You talked about meeting Link at a ski resort. Tell us about old school CE and how you got to here.
Oh boy, well, let's see, try to condense that, right? Okay, so I was like Ross Nash, one of the original cosmetic, the OG cosmetic docs. His institute was 500 feet down the street from my practice when I opened.
Oh, cool.
So that was like, man, that was all. I went to like every one of his courses in the first 3 years after I opened, I think. So lots of hands-on. And oh gosh, until the 08 recession, I did lots of cosmetic stuff, different places. Then did some ortho. Pretty much all hands-on, really. And then in 2012, that's when I started doing a lot of perio surgery and implants, stuff like that. Culminated with Dental XP. Went down to Brazil for their hands-on course there, which I do highly also recommend. Man, it's great course. And then COVID hit, and it was like, okay, so I've had memberships to like Spear and some others. I can't even remember which other ones I had anymore, but. Dental XP's online thing. So, but I never really did them because I'm ADHD, seriously ADHD. So the idea of me directing my own online CE, talk about a waste of money. And so that got us in, like I said, pandemic and, obviously that was a stressful time for all of us, that was lots of different reasons. And so like at the end of 2020, just that stress added onto the stress of essentially redoing, kind of frequently redoing class 2s because, they came back for recalls, there were voids or open contacts with food packing and, patients don't like that kind of thing.
The class 2, Chip, a constant, this should bond us together with using a dental term, right? Whether you've been out 24 years, 2 years, or 44 years, the class 2 can always be frustrating. So I think what's important for me to point out to the audience is, even though Dr. Chip does perio surgery and some fancy and or schmancy procedures, all of us still have these fundamental things to do. My dream, Chip, was to play in the NBA. It failed miserably, but one of my sponsors bought me a basketball with the Nacho logo on it, so I appreciate it. But I always talk about fundamentals of dentistry, the dribbling, the passing, the shooting. And that's why I want to kind of, pun intended, drill into the class 2. You were frustrated with your class 2s on recalls, even though you're 20 years into this career. Tell me more about that. Why? Because I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, so I realized that I hadn't actually done any CE on the fundamentals, just class 2s or class 3s or class 4 since dental school. I never did. I did all the complicated, the fancy and schmancy stuff, but not the basics. And I was still basically doing a class 2 with a Toffelmeyer and, wooden wedges. And, sure, that works sometimes, but it's hard to get nice anatomy. And you got overhangs if you don't get it wedged tight enough. Or you got tipped and rotated teeth, and you're like, oh, this doesn't fit. And you're trying to burnish that thing. It's just, it doesn't work very well. And that's what I was still doing. It's kind of like back, like the dark ages of posterior class 2s. And so I was, that stress added on top of COVID stress. I was like, something's got to change. And so I was talking with Mike Melkers, who's been, a longtime friend and mentor. And he said, dude, something's coming up really soon. This is like probably October, November, 2020. And he said, just give it like a couple of weeks. Don't sign up for anything else. And then, they announced the RIPE Global Fellowship in Restorative Dentistry. And so it's a 2-year program, but you can sign up if you want, just for the first half, which is anterior and posterior, and you don't have to do the veneer and full mouth rehabs. So that's what I initially did. Because I was like, all I want
to interject. Chip, I have a good thing you can talk with your family or your office manager, your spouse. I don't interrupt people, Chip. I just interject with good ideas. So I'm going to interject with a good idea. And what I want to interject, because it's your story, is what Dr. Lincoln Harris and the RIPE Global team have done is put a focus on the fundamentals of restorative dentistry, because it's what impacts our practice and our stress level, our success level, our patient confidence, the money that makes. So I just want to point out, you were specifically said, hey, I am going to invest my time, energy, expense in learning anterior and posterior composites. Now back to you. Can tell us about this experience. Just wanted to point that out to the audience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I wanted to figure out how to handle the tipped and rotated teeth. I wanted to figure out how to get the anterior composites to blend in visibly. Not that I do like multi-layered composite veneers or anything like those are still kind of a pain, but I wanted to get those fundamentals. And I knew that the only way I would do it is by actually being forced to do it. Like I said, if you're just doing an online lecture, there's no practice involved with that. And that was one thing. Like, if you really want hands-on, you got to go somewhere, or at least you used to have to. Now you don't have to. But I needed lots of repetition, not just once or twice, not just one afternoon, but I needed lots of repetition. I needed to be able to then, take pictures and post them up and say, okay, I kind of got this, but this still isn't working. What am I doing wrong? What am I missing? And that's where the fellowship, number one, you get lots of repetitions. It's not just like a one afternoon, you do one thing and then you're done with it. Nope. You get multiple, just over and over repetition. And then you get to have feedback.
And I want to point out, just well, what you're not here. One thing about dentists, Chip, so I'm, a dentist in New Jersey, founder of Dental Nachos, founder of Dentist Job Connect. But there's only one job I can't do remote: dentistry, right? I can't do dentistry remote. But Link and his team have made real world CE remote, because you're doing this in your own operatory. You're doing this.
Which is even better.
You're learning. So just so everyone understands, the RIPE Global Fellowship, it's at your office with your favorite handpiece and your favorite chair. So while I'm an enormous fan of hands-on CE at hotels, most of us are not prepping teeth at hotel conference rooms next to a cup of coffee there. So it's better than not doing it, but it's nowhere near like doing office. So does the RIPE Global team send you the materials to use? Kind of walk the dentist through the details of, you're doing these class 2s, you're doing these anterior composites, you're in your operatory, are you using your own instruments? Do they send you stuff? Tell us about that.
So the basics that you get sent are a mannequin head and typodonts with some extra sets of teeth. That's all that you have to get from them. Like, they do recommend electric handpieces, and if you want, you can get an electric motor set up from them, but you don't have to. I already had electric, so I was like, no, I don't need electric handpiece set up. But so that's the main thing. That's all you really need. So I just go, when you're doing the hands-on exercises, I go to my office. Although I do think, now this is one of the funniest things they did. I think they originally did it as a joke, but then they ended up using it as a real ad for the fellowship. They had a video of a guy doing the hands-on exercise on the mannequin. They started with a tight crop, and then they zoomed out, and they eventually you get to the point where you see that he's on the back of his pickup truck on the beach.
Yeah, that's Dr. Timothy
It's
Camp,
a great video.
who actually kind of looks like Link. So I thought it was Link. It's Dr. Timothy Camp right now. So yeah, so what Link has said is you just need the ability to have what, compressed air basically, or what?
Compressed air, some power. You got to have electricity. So for the handpiece or compressed air, and some kind of a suction. I mean, it helps at least.
So while ideally it is in your own operatory where all the stuff you like, you can, if you're an associate saying, hey, I don't have access to my own operatory on the weekends and things like that. So I just want to continue to point out how transformative this is for CE, because both you and I have been sitting in many Holiday Inns over our careers. No disrespect to the Holiday Inn CE, but it just lecture learning. To me, this is what I say, Chip. Lecture learning is for awareness. Hands-on is for action. Yep. So you do need both, right? You do need awareness, but for action. So tell us a little more. You're doing the posterior and anterior composites. How are you communicating with the teaching team while you're in your office?
Basically, just like we're doing right now. They use a different streaming WebEx service than Zoom, but yeah, WebEx. But it's basically the same thing. It's just you've got the main lecture on the screen demonstrating, and then you're all the group that's in there, and then ideally you want to have a camera, a digital camera, so that you can take photos and just upload them right to the space in WebEx and get feedback. So you do it on the mannequin, take the type, and that's the thing. Because doing it on a mannequin, while it's not exactly like a human, it doesn't have a tongue, there's no saliva, there's no real lips, but it's still more realistic than holding it in your hand and doing it on a desktop. With that, you could put the handpiece through the back of a person's throat, and work on the second molar, but that's not realistic, right?
And I'm also a fan, Chip. I am a fan of patient courses, and I've been part of them. And patient courses are great, but the patient only has one number 29. So you can't just extract it and put another one in. So it sounds like you can do multiple reps throughout this program. Link has said this isn't your fun, just relaxing CE. This is, you're supposed to be in this gym doing these reps and showing your work. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, that's actually a great example. So like in the posterior boot camp, crown boot camp, as part of the posterior module, you do 17 crown preps in 6 hours. And I mean, it's, upper, maxillary, mandibular, so you still have to use indirect vision on them. You're basically like, you do one thing where you try to do a whole crown prep in a single pass, and see what it looks like. And, then how do you refine that? It's about efficiency and getting good results and doing it under pressure. I mean, like intense, where they say, okay, you've got, 20 minutes, do 4 crown preps, and you're trying to like, what, 20 minutes, 4 crown preps? I mean, you can do it, of course, and depending on how efficient you are, it's, that's easier or harder, but it's really interesting. I mean, so, like in the US, we tend to do a lot of crowns. That's just like a normal thing we do, right? In other parts of the world, crowns are like not very common. I mean, that's why like some of the Facebook groups you see like with other parts of the world, they're like, you see these massive, posterior composite, like capping cusps and everything. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not capping cusps with composite. If I got to do that, I'm doing a porcelain onlay or something like that. But so in that thing, I mean, watching people go from like almost being terrified of crown preps, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, some of these people, some of my colleagues in the first group, they were almost scared of them, and having to do that in 17 in 6 hours. I mean, that's like some of the first ones we saw from some of these people. You kind of looked at and you're like, wow, I'm glad they're not working on me, and not the. But then some of them now, I mean, there are some of them that actually make my crown press. I feel like they put me to shame.
That's, I mean, that
Well,
story is
I mean,
also, what I want to share about
yeah,
this is, it sounds like, linking the team, like personal trainers, like, you're going to do 20 push-ups. When? Now, because you've been saying this and
yep,
everybody does this. Whether it's at the gym or at CE, it's hard to force yourself out of your comfort zone. It's very difficult. The brain says,
yes,
I've done enough. I'm not going to do it. I'll do it later. But when someone's there with social shame in a good way, right? With social peer pressure in a good way, when your trainer's like, we're going to do 20 push-ups right now, do them. You could be a CEO that makes $10 million a year. You're doing it in front of this personal trainer because you're saying, I'm not going to let this person, shame me. And that's why, and when it's done with the fundamental, core chip of respect and growth and wanting people to do better.
yes.
It sounds like you guys become kind of a little bit of a fun team with this group. Is that you get to know your classmates?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and especially, I mean, several of them I've actually gotten to meet in person several times now, and really become good friends. Kind of follow each other through this, and and met each other at other courses as well. And actually, a couple of them we're now going through some educator training with RIPE, with hopefully eventually you'll see my name up on there as well. But yes, I mean, you get to know. I mean, there are people that I know now in like Singapore, in multiple parts of Australia, in a couple different countries in Europe.
It's awesome.
That I would be like, if I'm ever traveling over there and I had a tooth break, I'd be like, oh, holy shit, let's see, wait a minute, how far are we from Jacqueline?
And what I'll say, Chip, is this, it's the whole Nacho mission. And I did a video on this once, and I ended it with this, and people are like, no one really likes the dentist. We may as well like each other, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we may as well like each other, right? We may as well get to know each other. Honestly, we're all out there in our operatories, striving to help people chew and smile with confidence. Patients get annoyed with us. It's not easy. So before I finish, I want to just do one more detail thing, get into your why. These continuums are 3 months long. You did anterior, posterior. You've also done, what were the other two that you did?
So then the third one is veneers, and both composite and porcelain. And then the last one is full mouth rehab. So like multidisciplinary treatment planning, execution. Like I said, I've still got to actually get my, I'm still working on which ones I'm going to do.
It takes you from layups, Chip, to knocking down Steph Curry 3-point shots if you want to do that. It sounds like it took you from the class 2 composite to full mouth rehabs. So I want to share that you can text the word RIPE, RIPE, to 215-543-6454 to get our Nacho sponsor deal on joining. We're not done with Chip. I just want to share, you can find out more about this awesome program. Chip has shared the details with us in a super generous way. But I kind of want to talk about, I've been a dentist for 20 years. You've been a dentist for 24 years. I affectionately call us medium-age dentists, Chip. We're MADs, right? Baby-age dentists, affectionately.
I like that.
You're getting close, though. You know what happens after year 26? Because I was lecturing, Chip, and someone goes, and these are all affectionate terms. You got baby-age dentist, you got medium-age dentist. He goes, I want one for me. I said, how long you been a dentist for? He said, 32 years. I said, you're a seasoned age dentist. That stands for sad.
No.
In its most affectionate way, we're MADs, and I really want you to share with our audience. You're 24 years in your career. You're a successful solo GP by staying in business and being profitable. And you said, hey, I am going to invest $24,000 into my education. Before talking about maybe potential production ROI, tell me about the ROI on maybe morale, sweating inside, less crying inside, confidence, happier patients. Tell us the stuff that doesn't show up on the P&L stat sheet about this experience with RIPE Global.
Yeah, well, remember I was talking about all the, not a lot of class 2s that I was having to redo, but if you figure every single class 2, even if it was one a month, I mean, that probably was a loss of $500 an hour, conservatively. So, do a few of those, and I mean, that starts adding up because, I did it once, and I had my overhead, and then second time I'm doing it for free.
I'm going to guess,
Chip, still got the overhead.
I'm going to guess, Chip, the patient They didn't storm out of your office. They didn't say it, but I'm assuming they didn't say, hooray, we get to do it again for free. That was my assumption.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
that is very true.
I'm assuming your team wasn't thrilled to set up the operatory again. These are all things we do to make our patient do things right for our patients. This is all part of dentistry. You redo a crown, you redo this, but I'm just pointing out that that's a frustrating experience for the assistant, the dentist, and the patient. And you're also sharing it's a loss of revenue. So you're basically, that's not happening as frequently now. You feel better saying, I know I'm going to get the right contour, the right fill with the cost.
I would say I'd say it doesn't happen at all anymore. I mean,
That's
and
awesome.
which it really, I mean, it still kind of blows me away that, I mean, I had a case in December, of course, December is always highly stressful, end of the year, everybody's trying to cram in before their insurance runs out.
You had 11 months to do it, Millie. 11 months. We treatment planned that crown February 10th.
And now you got to call in. And it's like, what do you mean you don't have any time left? So but I had a case where it was like 28 was tipped buccally and rotated mesially, 29 was tipped lingually and rotated distally, and 30 was actually, I think 30 was missing, and 31 had tipped mesially so it was in contact. So it was like, this weird shape. So like, how are you going to do that with, the old, Toffmeyer? I'm sorry, you can't. But now I've got, like 3 different matrix systems. And although I use a Toffmeyer maybe 4 or 5 times a year, it can still be useful. And I mean, every single one of those contacts came out. Oh, and I use a rubber dam now too. Never used to use it except for endo. I actually love rubber dams now. No joke.
What makes you love the rubber dam? I love the rubber. I don't do as much extraordinary, but I love the rubber dam. I'll tell you my why. But why do you love the rubber dam?
Because it's almost like working on a typodont.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, because no tongue, no saliva, no lip. It's just everything's pushed out of the way, and the patient's not talking and trying to interrupt, and your tongue.
And that was I always want to give credit to a joke. I always want to give credit to who told the joke, and it was he lectured for me back in like 2014, Dr. Mike Totola, and he's quite a funny character. And he said, he goes, how often do I hit the adjacent tooth when I'm doing a class 2? He goes, what's higher than 100% of the time? And then he said, the other thing he said, and Christensen said, that's what happens, when you, and then the other thing he says, we're the only idiot healthcare professionals that signed up to work on our patients while they're awake, right? So everybody else who does this stuff. So I want to share that the rubber dam, to me, when I did a lot of restorative dentistry, it was like the blanket over the parakeet cage. The patient, once it was on, just seemed to be still, and they weren't asleep. Some did fall asleep, but to me, it was glorious to just look at that one quadrant and do that. So you're saying now you're using the rubber dam, so it's
all the time,
and it probably, and while speed is not the goal of everything, I've never had a patient say I want to be here longer, right? So now I'm assuming your efficiency is increased as well.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Because I mean, if you're not trying to like sit there and hold the cheek out of the way or hold the tongue back, I mean, especially those ones with the really strong tongues. And I mean, sometimes sometimes there are cases where you just can't, and then you are holding it out of the tongue out of the way and fighting it, and it's like you get to the end, you're like, oh my god, my wrist hurts, and it makes you appreciate the rubber dam a lot more. But yeah, it's just because it's almost like working on a typodont, because you can see everything's out of the way. It's just, there's the tooth I want to work on right there. I can just work on it and not worry about anything else.
And what I know,
it's just easier.
There's going to be a lot of people watching this on demand. So we'll go for a second. You did the 2 modules that were fundamental. And then what has been fun about the fancy and or schmancy or veneer and full mouth rehab? Like even you who've done courses like this in the past, how is the RIPE Global experience different when you start to learn about these fancy and or schmancy procedures?
All right. So the reason I didn't originally sign up for the veneer and the full mouth case is because having done those before, I'd had a few of them that I ended up getting really burned out on. I mean, just like where I put my heart and soul into it and, thought we had it nailed. And I had one case like right before the pandemic where, I mean, I don't even know how many hours I put into it. And like a year later, the patient came back and said, well, actually, I hated it. I wish I hadn't let you cement it.
Oh, jeez.
Like, are you kidding
I,
me?
I, I actually
And
just, I want to insert this for a second because I love this conversation. And this isn't meant to actually be a joke. Uh, a psychological assessment of some of those patients is necessary almost before starting some of these cases. And
oh yeah,
we're not qualified all the time. And it's just, some of it, they had such unrealistic expectations about what teeth can do for their face, when there's other things that can be done. So I'll let you get back on track, but I've been there, done that in some of those challenging scenarios.
yeah. So what the let's see. So having been through that, I was just like, God, my practice is already profitable. I'm cruising pretty well. I've gotten a lot of those initial stresses out of the way from the first two modules. And I didn't need to do it. I mean, I said, it's not, and it's still not like I'm just like all of a sudden pumping out veneer and full mouth cases or anything. I'm not. But I was like, you know what, if I could learn how to do those fundamentals that much better now, maybe if I take the next two modules, then I'll learn how to get those things. Maybe I'll learn the fundamentals that I'm missing the book. And it turns out, I mean, so I actually didn't know like how to do all this stuff. I didn't know how to implement all of it.
Right.
Like, and sometimes actually how to say no. Like sometimes to recognize those red flags and to say, you know what, maybe we should do this. So the fellowship takes those fundamentals and applies them to the fancy schmancy stuff and says, if you do the fundamentals of the fancy schmancy stuff, and that's where you get the repetition, you get the veneer prep repetitions, you get the composite veneer prep repetitions, how to take prepping a quadrant and transfer that to prepping a whole arch and then a whole mouth, and how do you maintain the bite? If you're opening vertical and the temps, then how do you maintain that while you're either scanning or taking impressions? And so now okay, so it's just about fundamentals of veneers. You just have to stick with the fundamentals of the veneers and the full arch and the full mouth. And when you stick with that, it makes those easier, just like the class twos got easier. And so that was like, well, okay, if the posterior and anterior have helped me that much, then maybe the veneer and the full mouth case will do the same. And yeah, that's what happens.
And all of this for
like
$24,000. As we wrap up, I want to talk about a couple things. I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Mandasi. She's great. She's down in Charleston. She does photography courses with Adamo. She's a high-level dentist. And in the interview, she talked about, she's like, Paul, I needed a coach to tell me it was okay to get an associate, right? My coach talked to me about my deserve level. And my coach is like, Amanda, you're a mom, you're running a practice, you're lecturing all over the country, get yourself an associate. But what's kind of magical about that experience is Amanda couldn't do it herself, right? She couldn't say, I said, I could do it all like every dentist, right? And now that she has an associate dentist, she's much happier, right? So I love this deserve level thing. Let's now talk about this clinical deserve level, because I feel when stuff doesn't go right, this is how you feel inside, right? Doesn't matter what age you are. Contacts aren't right, patient's mad, they thought it was going to happen. So you deserve to feel less like that, no matter where you are in your career. So talk to me, Chip, about maybe a dentist 5 years out of school, work for a DSO, work for private practice, has some debt, and they say, I don't want to invest $24,000 in my education. Why do they deserve to do that? What impact would this have had on you if you were 5 years out of school?
I really actually like that. That's cool.
Nice.
The deserve level. That's cool. So here's an example. So in the second group of docs starting the fellowship, there was a dentist who literally was still in dental school when he started. And I thought he was nuts. I was like, you're still in dental school, you're dealing with professors, and you're starting this at the same time. I was like, you're nuts. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But even then, the funny thing is the poor guy couldn't even talk with his professors, because we all know how dental professors are. No matter how long ago you practice, I don't think they probably change much. You can't give them a whole lot of new information. But so yeah, it's like I think back. Okay, yes, sure. With Nash, I learned a lot of fancy schmancy stuff early on. But even though I was doing more of it then, I still had to do the class 2s and class 3s and class 4s. And I think about how much less stress I would have had for 24 years if I had learned this stuff back then. Because it just,
Right.
the stress builds up. It's not like it goes away. You can take a vacation, but if you haven't learned those fundamentals, when you come back from vacation, it's still there. You're just picking right back up where you were.
Sure.
And I mean, it doesn't even matter how much vacation you take, it's still going to be there every time you come back. But if you learn that, those fundamentals, every time you come back, you're not worried about it. It's like you can go off on vacation and you can relax. You can really enjoy it a lot more. And I mean, so it's not like then, like I just, we took 2 weeks off at the end of the year and it was like really restful and relaxing. I was ready to come back, because I'm not dreading coming back. It's like,
it also,
oh, yeah.
everything in life is troubleshooting, right? It's from whether it's parenting, whether it's being a practice owner or a dentist, but inside that operatory, you can be a dentist that owns 10 practices. You could be an associate out of school. You're the person in charge inside of that operatory. And if you can do something to make that more fun for you and the patients and less stressful, do it. I mean, what Dr. Chip has shared has been so magnificent, because this is what we should be talking about more. Why we all should be getting better at any age or stage of your career. What Dr. Lincoln Harris and Ripe Global have done is they've made it an anywhere, any place type of thing. They've made it amazingly affordable, because Chip, if I said to a dentist, $24,000 for CE, that's expensive, but why is this really a good deal? I mean, the CE world, what continuums cost. Over 2 years, why is $24,000 to invest in 4 modules to get better with your fundamentals and fancy and schmancy? Why is that a good deal?
So this is fun. So I actually did this in a conversation, like in a one-on-one conversation with somebody right like between Christmas and New Year's. And so if you think about it, like, let's just pick Spear, with a big institute, well-known, lots of people I've been there, great courses, CEREC doctors out there. So a 3-day course, typically with them, say $6,000 plus airfare, 7,000 hotels, meals. I mean, you're looking at $8,000. And that's not even counting if you have to lose a day of production, for travel. So let's conservatively say, $10,000 for 27 hours of CE.
Right.
And you want to get 400 hours, which is, roughly what you get with the fellowship. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's like
6,000, say, hundreds of thousands. It's no exaggeration. It's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you still don't get nearly as much. Think about how much time, how many weekends you'd have to take away from your family, to do
sometimes
that.
That's one of the struggles. I have an 8 and a 4-year-old. Maybe when they're 18 and 14, they'll say, "Get out of the house, Dad. We don't want you here." And I'll say, "Okay."
Yeah.
But that's a real struggle, because your family unit, this isn't about men, women, spouse. When one spouse is not at the house, this is going to happen to me this weekend, by the way. It's going to be this. I am going to have the pleasure of spending more time with my children this weekend, Chip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be extra stressful, because my wife is not going to be in the house for the next 2 days, and she deserves to go with her friends. But if you do this too often to your spouse with CE, it can just be a lot of friction. And I understand why. If my spouse was constantly going to a photography CE course, and even if she was getting better, and even if she was making more money, and even I'd be like, oh my gosh, another weekend, I don't know, 4-year-olds, Chip, we have those. I don't know how to explain them. They're insane. It's like living with an insane person. So I think that's so important, both the deserve level and both the practicality of doing this in your operatory. Still go to CE, and I'm going to wrap up with Link's thing here in a second. He's coming to Philadelphia. But when you really want to get to this gym and put in these reps, it sounds like the right global education is for you.
Oh, it is. It's phenomenal. And I just want, because we talked a little bit about like some of the negative CE, and then the cost differential. So just to talk a little about the positive return real quick, because I think it's important. So, and again, practice being, 22 years old when I started the fellowship, pretty well established and, pretty successful. We got our overhead under control. But so let's see, just number one. So for a 22-year-old practice to grow at a 10 to 15% clip,
Awesome.
it's hard to do, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to do that, when you're starting out. I mean, you might do 50, 75%, but to grow 10 or 15%, if you're already we're in the $1.5 million range. So to grow 10% is not easy. And we grew 12% last year.
Wow. That's really impressive. Because
to
make
that's
more money
directly as a result. Yeah.
You get to make more, when you make more money, you can do more good things. And I get very frustrated, Chip. Some people make more money and donate it to charity. Some people make more money and create more jobs for people in their practice. Some people make more money and take a fancier vacation. I love all of them. Whatever you want to do with more money.
Yeah.
But making more money for the same amount of work gives you more freedom to do more good things. Which people say, all these dentists want to grow their practice. Yeah, they can provide more jobs in their office. That's great. All these dentists want to make more money so they can retire earlier. Okay, maybe they sell their practice to someone else. So I think talking about, and I love these two, growing 12% as a mature practice, it's really impressive. And I'm glad that you kind of ended with that. Before we wrap up, in April of 2023, Dr. Lincoln Harris is coming to Center City, Philadelphia, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Friday, Chip, both of us are going to talk about some of the business part of dentistry, making big decisions, enhancing your associates. On Saturday, he's going to run everyone through his rapid restorative treatment planning and how to treat.
Oh, yes.
And on Sunday, we're going to have an interactive job fair. Now, I'm in Philadelphia 340 days a year, but Link's coming from Australia. If someone's listening or watching, why do they want to come and meet Link in person? What kind of impact seeing him in person deliver that content?
So, because you've met Link. Link is, he's a funny guy.
Yeah,
he is a trip. He makes learning this stuff enjoyable. He really does. He gets you to laugh about doing class 2, and that's an accomplishment right there. His rapid efficient treatment planning. It's one of those things my brain still kind of locks up, and it's an ADHD thing, but he's helped me understand how to diagnose $50,000 cases much faster and easier, or 20,000, or stuff like that. So more predictably and easily, and get higher case acceptance. So it's not actually hard to do, as long as it's fundamentals. You have to do each step, and you do it in order, and it's the fundamentals of communication, right? Because patients, just most of them want to know, is it going to cost a lot? Is it going to hurt? How long is it going to take? But you have to be able to explain that in sense that they want to do it, that they value.
I've said this, some of my themes is, if you do not have confidence in communication, your clinical competence is irrelevant, because no one's doing anything with it. So
exactly. Yep.
Dental school is so irresponsible for not talking about this more. They will have students do class 5 preps over and over again, and they won't talk about communication, because dental school patients are usually lifers at these places. They're amazing people, but your dental school patient does not always translate into private practice. So what happens is they set these students up to fail miserably, financially, morale-wise, and it bothers me, because infusing that communication training is essential to helping people. Because if they do not trust you, if they do not think you're good, it doesn't matter if you're great at prep and crown. So that's what we're going to do in April.
Absolutely.
Is add that part in. Well, this was just so phenomenal, Chip. You can text RIPE to 215-543-6454 to learn more about this program. But I so appreciate your time. If someone wanted to reach out to you, Chip, and learn more about your experience, or when you might be an instructor or your practice, how could they do that?
Well, they can certainly look me up on Facebook, just under Charles Payet. They can always message me or text me on my cell, 704-451-3405. Awesome. They can email me at smilesbypayet, Payet, at Gmail. And just get in touch. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And like I said, I think it's a great program. I'm a huge fan of it.
I love it. I appreciate you spending this time with me. I'm inspired I know Ripe is a sponsor, but I'm going to kindly annoy dentists into good decisions that they're going to thank me for later. Thanks so much, Chip.
All right, terrific. Glad to.